You're looking to cut through the noise and really understand what's happening, right? That's what we try to do here.
Yeah, get beyond the headlines.
Exactly. So today we're taking a hard look at, well, a really impactful BBC Africa Eye documentary called Blood Parliament.
A powerful piece, definitely. It seems to have struck a real nerve.
Absolutely. It just came out this past April 2025. And it basically plunges us right into those deadly protests outside Kenya's parliament. That was June 25th, 2024.
Right, the one sparked by that controversial finance bill, the
Uh,
tax hikes.
That's the one. So our goal today isn't just to, recap the film. We want to really dig into the key moments it highlights.
And understand the ripple effects it's caused, the
Yeah.
reactions.
Yeah. So we're drawing on discussions about the documentary, various takes on it. The mission, if you like, is to unpack the main events, the reactions, and the bigger implications.
To get a clearer picture of the whole situation, basically.
Okay, so let's dive right in. Blood Parliament, like
Ah.
you said, BBC Africa Eye, looking at June 25th, 2024.
And what stands out immediately is the context, isn't it? These protests were heavily driven by Gen Z activists.
Yeah, younger generation really finding its political voice against those tax proposals.
And the documentary paints this really stark contrast, how the day started versus how it ended.
It's quite jarring. It describes this initial atmosphere, almost like a festival,
Yeah, vibrant, people coming together. There were details like Bluetooth speakers playing music.
Right, Bluetooth speakers, people sharing water bottles, just this energetic kind of collective vibe.
Which makes the turn towards violence feel even more, well, shocking.
Totally. And then, as you say, everything changed. The BBC investigation, and this is key, they say it's based on analyzing over 5,000 images and videos.
A massive amount of visual data.
And from that, they conclude that security forces were firing on unarmed protesters.
That's the core finding.
Mhm.
And it's presented not just as opinion, but based on that forensic analysis of the visuals.
And the numbers are just devastating. The Kenya National Commission on Human Rights reported 39 deaths.
And 361 injuries. It's a heavy toll. The documentary doesn't pull punches, showing that reality.
No, it doesn't. And the title itself, Blood Parliament. It's so evocative, isn't it?
It really is. Parliament is supposed to be, the people's voice, debate.
And then you juxtapose that with blood. It screams violation, tragedy.
A breakdown, really, between the state and citizens.
It feels like it's become much more than just a film now. It's like a cultural marker, maybe? A political lightning rod.
Definitely sparking intense debate, and clearly a lot of public anger.
And much of that anger seems directed, well, squarely at the political establishment.
Understandably, the documentary directly implicates security forces, which naturally leads to questions about accountability right up to the top.
Right. And you have President Ruto's initial reaction at the time praising security for defending national sovereignty.
Which lands very differently when you see the documentary's evidence of how that defense happened.
And what seems to be making things worse is the lack of accountability since then.
That's a huge point. Apparently, there was a parliamentary order for an investigation.
But nothing's come of it. No one held responsible.
Not so far, it seems. And that inaction is just pouring fuel on the fire, really intensifying those calls for justice.
And we're seeing a pushback from some political corners, aren't we? A sort of defensive reaction.
Oh, definitely. Especially online on X narratives, trying to frame the documentary as like a foreign plot or interference.
Yeah, accusations of paid activists, the BBC trying to stir up chaos, that kind of thing.
But it's hard to square those claims with the documentary's actual content. The forensic analysis showing people being shot.
Unarmed people.
Unarmed people, yes. And the personal stories, like that student journalist, Demba Allen's, his testimony is incredibly powerful.
It really is. It puts the political elite in a tough spot, PR-wise. They're not just arguing against the film.
They're arguing against a very tech-savvy, vocal, younger generation that's watching closely.
And that generation is very active online, which brings us to the bloggers, right?
Absolutely. X, formerly Twitter, has just erupted. It's become a real battleground since the documentary dropped.
You see these two distinct camps forming. On one side, loads of praise for the BBC.
Yeah, bloggers, influencers saying it's high-level intelligence. What was that quote? Journalism at its finest. I think Benz2534 said that.
Right, and you can't ignore the numbers, nearly 2 million YouTube views already. It's clearly resonating.
But then there's the other side. A very coordinated-looking pushback.
Reports of maybe 500 bloggers potentially working to discredit the film.
Allegedly, yes. Pushing hashtags like hashtag BBC4Chaos, trying to paint it as biased or malicious.
But even within that group, there seem to be cracks. That example of at Don Victor Simon telling pro-government bloggers to log off.
Yeah, saying the issue is too serious for online spats. That's quite telling, isn't it? Suggests maybe some unease even among government supporters.
It really throws a spotlight on the role of bloggers today, doesn't it? Are they journalists, activists, or more tied to political patronage?
Exactly. This whole situation exposes those fault lines, those complex roles they occupy in the information ecosystem.
So let's broaden out to the media perspective. The BBC obviously has a big presence in Kenya.
It does. Generally respected for its investigations, but like any major international outlet, it faces scrutiny too.
And Blood Parliament is a prime example of that kind of hard-hitting journalism that inevitably stirs things up.
For sure. And within Kenya's own media landscape, the reactions are varied.
We've seen some commentators, maybe some local outlets, framing it as a sort of Western lens on an African issue.
Yeah. Or maybe even implying it overshadows the work local journalists are doing, perhaps challenging their capacity.
Which touches on this issue of pressure,
Yeah,
right?
right.
There was that unconfirmed post on X.
Right, claiming the documentary was almost pulled because of pressure from authorities.
We can't verify that, obviously.
No. But it floats the idea, highlights the potential sensitivities and pressures involved in this kind of work.
And it's not like the BBC hasn't faced government friction before, even in the UK.
Oh, absolutely. Think back to things like the general strike coverage, way back when, or more recently, the Iraq war reporting. Clashes happen.
Stepping back even further globally, this documentary seems to have really elevated Kenya's Gen Z protests.
Definitely. It's putting them on the map as a symbol of youth resistance, drawing those comparisons to #EndSARS in Nigeria, or even the Arab Spring.
But that international spotlight also, perhaps indirectly, increases the pressure or maybe the risk for local journalists?
That's a crucial point. They're the ones on the ground day in, day out, often without the same resources or institutional backing as the BBC.
So the risks they face to keep reporting are very real.
Absolutely. And the public's reaction, wow, it's been visceral.
Yeah, just look at X again. Those hashtags trending, #BloodParliament, #June25, #Ruto must go.
It's like a digital continuation of the street protests, led by that same Gen Z demographic.
The ones who use TikTok and Instagram to organize in the first place.
Exactly. And now they're using the documentary, its evidence, its stories, to demand justice online.
And remember that description of the carnival atmosphere at the start? Boniface Mwangi mentioned it.
Yeah, the speakers, the water bottles.
That image has become symbolic now, hasn't it? A rallying cry, almost, representing what was lost that day.
It really underscores the tragedy. And the conversation isn't just happening in Kenya.
No, it seems to have sparked broader discussions globally about state violence, protest rights.
The fundamental relationship between citizens and security forces when dissent occurs.
But inevitably, a piece like this also deepens the divides, doesn't it?
It does seem to be polarizing. For some, it's pure truth-telling. For others, it might feel biased or intentionally divisive.
And that brings in the whole issue of misinformation, which is always lurking.
Right. Even the BBC has reported on public concern about this stuff. Wasn't there a stat like 70% of UK adults worried about fake news back in 2019?
So while the film is powerful, critical thinking from everyone engaging with it is still vital.
Absolutely. But ultimately, for everyday Kenyans, Blood Parliament seems to be forcing this moment of reckoning.
Yeah, grappling with really tough questions about how they're governed, about accountability, about the space for dissent.
And for the rest of the world watching, it's a powerful case study, isn't it? Showing the immense power of media to inform, yes, but also maybe to inflame.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, it's clear Blood Parliament isn't fading away. Nearly 2 million views and counting. Its impact is undeniable.
And the big questions hang in the air. Accountability, first and foremost. Will the political class face consequences? Will institutions like the Independent Policing Oversight Authority actually act?
That's the key question, isn't it? And for those bloggers caught in the crossfire online.
It's a tightrope walk, navigating that polarization while trying to maintain credibility, whichever side they're on, or if they're trying to be objective.
And the media's role, that ongoing responsibility.
Balancing bold reporting with accuracy, with accountability, especially when things are so volatile.
So for you listening, we hope this discussion encourages, well, just critical thinking about all the information swirling around this.
Yeah, maybe think about how this documentary, or even just our conversation about it, has shaped or maybe shifted your own perspective on protests, on power, on media itself.
We'd genuinely love to hear what you think. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments or find us on social media handle.
And maybe one final thought to leave you with, building on what we've discussed. We see the